So tell us a bit more about girls and fathers and girls and the importance.
Well, I think one of the critical things is that sense of being worthy to be loved. I think both boys, it affects both boys and girls, but it affects girls in a really profound way. And that they need to know how, I mean, what to expect in being treated by a man. And I think this is where I really like Nick Freitas when he talks about his daughter and why they didn't allow her to just date anyone like in her teenage years, and she ended up with this boy that she liked, and Nick talked about, um, well, do you understand why we don't support, like dating? And she's going, well, yeah, because it should be serious and it's not, not something just to do for fun. And she gives this kind of pat answer, and he goes, no, it's because we really want you to have what I have with your mother. We really want you to be able to have this because this is so incredibly precious and wonderful. And I think that's, for so many young people and so many girls, that's really missing because they're not seeing it. And there's a real imbalance of love. I found this with so many girls who end up getting exploited, whether in a relationship or through like trafficking, but they just don't know what to expect and they don't know what it feels like to be loved by a man. And one of the things we did before FatherCon was we had men standing against trafficking, where we would go out on a spot where girls were being trafficked, and we would meet, in an evening. We'd hold up signs, men standing against trafficking, and children shouldn't go through this. And it was really interesting because we were outside of a hotel where a trafficker actually killed one of his girls, and there were girls in the hotel, and they would look out the doors, and they would see us out on the street corners. And I think what I wanted was to introduce men to the idea that we're actually part of the solution. We're not just this evil demand. We're actually the solution to this problem as we take responsibility for what's happening. But also to send a message to the girls, like, in their minds, a girl who's being trafficked, in her mind, every single guy is a potential customer. And it doesn't matter. You can be a police officer, a judge, a priest, a father. It didn't matter. Every single man is a potential customer in their minds. And I wanted to counter that. And I wanted to show them that there were men who actually cared and wanted a better life for them, because they're really kind of like kept in this environment where that supports the belief that all men are interested in doing things to your body, and that's your value. Your worth as a human being is what you can provide to men, and hopefully get some money out of it, which is just really just it is so destructive to the human soul. I mean, to reduce yourself to a commodity like that.
And there's so much. I mean, so you probably, but you know more than I do. But for myself and most of our supporters, we talk about these terms like trafficking and sex trafficking, but we've got no real conception of the violence, the all everything that's behind those terms.
There was one girl, we were doing men standing as trafficking, and we're standing on a street corner, and this car comes whipping into the parking lot. And this very large black girl gets out, and she comes stomping up to me, gets right in my face, and I have no idea what to expect. And she looks me straight in the eyes and she goes, "Thank you." And I backed up and said, "You're welcome." And then she proceeded to tell me that 5 years before, she was being sold on that street corner. And the last customer that picked her up, once he finished his business, he pulled out a knife and he stabbed her and then dumped her in the gutter to die. And it was only because she was in the hospital for such a long period of time that her trafficker gave up on her and she got out of the life. But she was so grateful that somebody was doing something, at the very place where she had experienced that. And those experiences really moved me. Running into another time, a father came up and he said, "I did everything I was supposed to do. I did everything right for my family. I got two jobs. I worked. I saved money. I bought a house. And now my house happens to be on the blade, on the area where girls are being trafficked. And so not only are children being taunted by the girls wearing next to nothing, on the street corners in the morning, but the men are coming up to my 12-year-old daughter and offering her money for sex, and she's scared to go to school now." And this man was just weeping, and it was just like, the environments that we've created, they're just a tragedy. And I think there's this thinking that somehow this is beneficial to men, like that men are coming out on top, in this kind of sexual, freedom that they have to be able to just enjoy people and be able to pay for sex. And it's not, we're losing the ability to actually experience what love can be for us as human beings. And I think we're being deprived of something so important and valuable in exchange for what? 20 minutes in the back of your car, and then, all of the guilt and things that you have to deal with, post that. But there's this idea that somehow men are the beneficiaries of this sexual freedom. And it's, I just find that to be totally contrary. And
Again, there's a lot of work to be done among men and shaming men and waking men up and saying, well, like you spoke at the beginning, really, that there is actually a better route to self-fulfillment. This is not it. You might think it's it, but actually, why don't we pause for a second and look at this, because there's a much better route to self-fulfillment.
well, and with men committing suicide, men committing suicide at 4 times the rate of women. And it's like we're creating lives that are so vapid of meaning and significance and something that you can really be proud of as men. And I think it's killing us. I mean, it's really killing us by not allowing us to find that and develop that. And then I mean, you were mentioning before about like the number of women who are aspiring now to single motherhood, that we're shifting men away from any kind of position of necessity in culture. It's like that is not making anyone happy.
So I watched this Joe Rogan and Rachel Wilson interview, and she'd written a book on the if you like the dark foundations, underpinnings of modern feminism, and how it was never really in the interest of women at all. And it had some very dark kind of roots associated with it, and was actually pushed and pumped in the complete absence of what was good for women. And she's written a book on that, and I think there was this interview kind of earlier in the year, which I've only just caught up with, but very, very brilliant. And the points are, our society says, look, you don't need to settle down with a man. Have sex with men just like men have sex with women. Just, it doesn't matter. Just treat it like it's nothing, and
Exactly.
just do what you want to do, because you can do that. But
That's right.
actually, it turns out that's just not fulfilling for women, and it's not what they want.
No.
And also, just go to college, get a career, harvest your eggs, and have a kid later on. No, it turns out that's not actually what women want neither. And forget being tied to this, misogynistic husband. Go and spend your life reporting to another man who actually couldn't care less about you and replace you in an instant with somebody were you to leave. And the whole irony of that sort of stuff. And
Right,
and
right.
there is this just terrible message. Do you ever do any work with young people, young boys, young girls, in terms of um, FatherCon? Obviously, I'm guessing is mainly adult focused.
It's mostly adult focused, but our goal is to really, reach more young people. I've spoken in a lot of like high schools. We've done some, but I really want to increase that. Like as we have an increased staff, we can start to do more with the education of young people, because I think there is kind of a hunger for it. Um, there are the kids who are just addicted to TikTok, and then there are other kids who are really seriously looking for something genuine. And so there is an audience there, and I think, I often tell the story of this boy that I heard about, who he kept an empty picture frame next to his bed, and people would come in and say, what the heck, why do you have an empty picture frame there? And he'd go, that's for my future wife. And he goes, I don't want to do things today that I'm going to have to apologize to her for. So he used it as kind of his conscience. It was a little Jiminy Cricket or something, but he had this empty picture frame next to him as a constant reminder that someday I'm going to have someone that I want
Wow.
to be able to love me, like, and not
Yeah,
not be
yeah.
full of apologies and shame that I'm
That's
bringing into our
really
relationship.
powerful, isn't it?
And
That's
I loved
really
it. It was
powerful.
just so moving. And I think there are, if we start raising boys, you know, to look forward to becoming, fathers, that this is something that you actually aspire to, um, how much better off will we be? And for girls as well, like what to expect, what to look forward to, and that, it's not this fight between the trad wife and the CEO of a company, but really like the value of motherhood, and this is a unique position that you're in to be able to bring a child into the existence.
Well, I mean, we know, right, that statistically speaking, the happiest people alive are married with children, right? It's not a coincidence, you know. It's because it's really fulfilling, and you might think, well, yes, actually, even if you didn't believe in a creator or anything, you might think, yeah, evolution would make that particularly fulfilling because it's the thing that means you carry on existing as a species. So it's quite useful that that is fulfilling for you, isn't it? Makes an awful lot of sense. Yeah, but that message for young people, you know, and I suppose I get to talk to a lot of young people as I do some marriage courses, but I also do some pre-marriage stuff as well with young people, how to choose a partner, how to look for a partner, and that thing that actually, you know, for girls, if the boy you're with just wants to use your body as a source for his momentary gratification, maybe that's not the person you want to commit to protect your family long term going forward, you know. And people just think, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And also think about, you know, when you do marry somebody, well, would you like your marital partner to have done something with somebody else that you're planning to do with this person now? And I think part of the problem is you talked about prefrontal cortexes and the fact that, well, a lot of our youth won't have those developed yet. And so, you know, they don't necessarily think it forward, which brings me on to the school thing, because we don't tell kids the truth in school. We tell them the only thing that matters is consent. And we don't tell them the linkages between premarital sex partners and risk of divorce and all sorts of, we don't tell them the benefits of being married and how kids grow up better with biological mum and dad. For some reason, in the media, in government, in schools, we feel we don't want to tell that message. What's going on there?
Well, I think there's three things that really set off alarm bells for me. And so one of them was the result of the Me Too movement was this obsession with consent. That so before I hold hands with a girl, I need to ask for consent. Before I say anything or do anything, everything is consent centered. And then you have through the transgender movement, you have this idea that children know themselves and children should be able to decide for themselves what they do with their bodies and who they really are. And then the third thing is the introduction of sexual material to younger and younger children. So you're exposing children to clearly sexual material. I mean, even in schools, even in school libraries where they now have access to very explicit, pictures of,
Oh
homosexual
yeah.
sex
Oh
and all
yeah,
these
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So you add those three things together, and what are you doing to children, but setting them up for a disaster sexually? I mean, there have been Planned Parenthood International has introduced these white papers and policy papers to the UN, encouraging the acceptance of children's right to enjoy sexual pleasure, which is Alfred Kinsey's thing. We're
Well,
denying
that's right.
children
Okay, you're
pleasure.
discredited as a, kind of pervert. Absolutely right. And
Well, and they just put up
pedophile.
a
Yeah,
statue to him. In
yeah,
America, where we're
yeah.
tearing down statues of Lincoln, we're putting up statues of Kinsey. We clearly have to do a much better job of educating children, so in schools, but also demonstrating it. And I think this is another point that I've emphasized, to an awful lot of couples is you need to show your love for each other to your children. They need to see you hold hands. They need to see these things. And it's easy as you get, into a marriage. Like I've been married with my wife for 44 years. And it's like it's easy to reach points where you feel like, well, that stuff's not necessary, and I don't really need to hold your hand anymore. And it's just not true. And it's good for us to have this kind of physical, affection. But even it's so valuable for children, like to see their parents love each other. I'll never forget. I do not like shopping. I admit it. I'm a dude. I do not like shopping. But I go shopping with my wife, and a lot of times I'm on my phone. Okay, don't hate me, but I'm checking things on my phone. She's out there squeezing tomatoes. But one day I intentionally left my phone in the car, and I just spent the time with my wife shopping. And the next thing I know, my wife is calling our daughters and telling her this, and my daughters are sending me messages saying, "We can't believe you didn't bring your phone into the grocery store." But I realize how these little things matter to our children. Like they're watching, and the way that we treat our time with our spouse is really important to them.
Yeah, and I think that's you're right. I mean, the world is watching too, you know, and it's wonderful. I love holding my wife's hand, and I love learning more about it. It just sounds completely ridiculous, but the more you learn, the more you love, and that's exactly how. The idea that the longer you've been married, the more intoxicated you should be with each other, and it turns out that is actually possible. And the thing I do around the place is called astonish the world, because your marriage should astonish the world, and it could astonish the world. And really, there are very simple techniques and thoughts and conversations you can have to make it astonish the world. And it's going to be hard work, right? 44 years, that. There have been really rough times, but it's just like I have to say, it's like a garden, Sometimes you're out there in the cold weather and the storm and you're wondering what the point is. But actually, the sun comes back pretty soon, right? And there are views you can see from a long-term marriage up that steep hill that nobody can see unless they've climbed it, it's just wonderful.
Oh, and that's the thing with the Harvard study. I think it's now 88 years where they've studied. Part of it is on human happiness, and they said nothing compares to long-term relationships. It could be friendships, but usually it's with your spouse or with your children. And that's where our reward, I mean, that's where the greatest sense of accomplishment, of pleasure, of happiness in life comes from. Not these things that come and go, but these long-term relationships where you've been through a lot together and you're building something. And I think we sometimes lose that idea that we're actually growing and developing and building something through our relationship.
Yeah. Well, listen, when is FatherCon 2027?
We're looking at February 2027, which is ironically going to be, I mean, the ARC conference is going to be in Malibu, also in February.
Oh, there's a day in Malibu, isn't there?
A
Yeah,
day, a
something
day
like that.
conference, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Nice for those who can make it, right? But let us know, because we will try and publicize the date. I think you and I need to find a way of doing some more practical stuff for people. Maybe some
Yeah.
actual fatherhood. How can I be a better dad? How can I rekindle my relationship with my children when I've lost it, or something? I don't know. There's loads of stuff we could do, which may well be quite helpful. And actually, maybe we need to do that separately, because you're a wonderful bloke, a lovely bloke, Patrick. It's such a privilege to know and meet you. I'll put up the website address to FatherCon, so people can go and look at that and get involved if they can. Anything else you want me to point people to?
I think one quote that I really like is Dr. Meg Meeker. And I don't know if you've ever spoken with her. She's a pediatrician, but she's written books on fathers and mothers, and a fascinating person. But she says nothing that you do, nothing that you say or do is neutral. And I think that we need to really keep that in mind, that our children are assigning meaning to the things that they experience, with us. And they don't have the development to be able to really understand the context of a father who's had a bad day. And the
Yeah,
more
yeah,
that we
yeah.
keep that in mind, that, what is my child going to understand from my behavior right now? And then how can I have the vulnerability to be able to say, look, yeah, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have said that, or, to fix things as quickly as we can. But I think we have such power as men to shape, how our children are going to see themselves and the world around them. And that is such a blessing. It's such an honor that we have that, and to not buy these lies that, do as I say and not as I do as I say, not as I do. These kind of platitudes that are actually really destructive. I really hope that more men will realize that they're holding in their hands the opportunity for a great sense of success through their parenting and through being fathers, and being trustworthy. To me, that's just really, really critical. And I'm so grateful to you. I've been following you for a long time, and I just really, really appreciate your interviews, and I get so much out of them. And when I came to London, I was so anxious to meet you, and I'm so
Well, what a
grateful it all
privilege,
worked out.
honestly. I have to say, it is as hot in Cardiff today as it is in Southern California. So, but we don't have air conditioning. It's like, no, I haven't heard of that. What's
Sorry,
that?
sorry, we
Oh my
do. Yeah,
goodness. It's remarkable. But listen, Patrick Erlandson, you are such a joy and a privilege to talk to you, and we will speak again. Thanks for all you're doing. Keep up the great work, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Tony. Likewise.